Easter. One of the most pleasant, lively, innocent, and enjoyable holidays of the Western world, which has taken on huge commercial significance for the Americans, as seemingly every major holiday does, has incredible historic roots, great culture behind it, and amazing religious significance. A time of rebirth and celebration as spring is upon us, and new green verdure, eggs, bunnies, and the resurrection of Jesus remind us of the chances of a new life and a new hope. In order to grasp the full meaning and understanding of Easter, it is important to look at its traditions, its cultural context, and of course, its history. Besides the bunny, perhaps the most common tradition surrounding Easter is the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth, the Christian Lord and God, who was in the grave supposedly for only 3 days before coming to life again. A huge theme of Easter, indeed, is renewal and rebirth. Jesus was executed by the Romans on the not-so-aptly named Good Friday several days before, and the cross, as well as the celebration of his resurrection, became the biggest celebrations of the Christian season. Additionally, Jesus' institution of the communion, as well as the washing of his disciples' feet and announcing of his betrayal at the Last Supper, was a huge fixture in Christian religious practices. Many of these traditions and practices that dot the Christian landscape around the season of Easter and were practiced by Jesus and his followers directly are borrowed from Jewish tradition, of which Jesus was a Jewish rabbi. The Jews, according to the book of Exodus, were led by a man named Moses. Moses demanded that the Egyptians free the Jews who were in captivity. The Pharaoh refused, and God sent plagues, the last one of which brought about Passover. God instructed Moses to spread the blood of a lamb on the doorpost of the Jewish people so that they would not be attacked by his spirit, which came and slaughtered the Egyptians. This slaughter led the Pharaoh to relent, the Jews to go free and go into the desert, whereupon the Lord gave laws to Moses, one of which was a series of instructions about celebrating their escape from Egypt in a celebration that became known as Passover or Pesach, a celebration that continues to this day constantly with the celebration of Seders. It is also ending the day of Easter this year, interestingly enough. The Last Supper itself was a Jewish Seder performed by a Jewish rabbi and his followers in first century Judea. Giving it proper context, the traditions of Easter date back even before Easter itself was instituted according to the Christians. Jesus then was betrayed, tortured, and murdered, and 3 days later won the victory, supposedly, by rising from the dead, giving Easter the Christian theme of renewal and rebirth. Renewal and new life are integral to Easter, as they are to Christianity, and anyone who has ever been to an Easter egg hunt can testify when they look on the green pastures and the young children with smiles on their faces collecting candied eggs that Easter is all about renewal. However, pagan celebrations also carry much about renewal, and they also account for the typologies of the eggs, the bunnies, the chicks, and the other animals. The most ancient celebration of Easter supposedly is from the Mesopotamian goddess of fertility, Ishtar, who 3,500 years before Jesus was already being worshipped by the Mesopotamians and Sumerians. However, based on a loose pronunciation of the name, similarities, and the theme of fertility, which is common for a spring holiday like Easter, Ishtar was actually not having much to do with the celebration of Easter. Instead, it is an over-application of the themes of fertility by pagans who seek to devalue and defang the Christian message. At the same time, however, a much more able candidate for the paganic roots of Easter is Eostre, the goddess of the Anglo-Saxons, who was, like Ishtar, the goddess of fertility, greenery, and renewal. She brought about the spring equinox in the beautiful season of Easter. Easter, according to the pagan peoples of the Anglo-Saxons of Germany and England, which the Anglo-Saxons later conquered, was supposed to be celebrated on the first Sunday following the first full moon following the spring equinox, which is why it is a lunar calendar holiday that shifts every year to this day, much like Passover, its Jewish ancestor. As for Eostre, like Ishtar and Athena, she is adorned with owls to show her wisdom, but also is usually accompanied by a bunny, a hare, an animal that can reproduce at a great rate, showing the renewal and reproductive nature of spring and Easter itself. The hare supposedly was transformed from a bird by Eostre to please the local children and amuse them, and thus the hare became one of the biggest symbols of Easter, if not the biggest. Easter is indeed a spring holiday, one of renewal and reproduction, and it makes sense that the hare, which can give birth to live offspring while still being pregnant with other offspring, is an excellent candidate. However, these ancient pagan traditions were soon to be swallowed up and later normalized and defanged in the modern culture. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire, Christianity became the dominant political and spiritual force in the Western world, and soon many of the countries and peoples, both willingly and by force, adopted Christianity as their religion, with Easter being its central holiday, Christmas not having the weight that it does now. Easter was thoroughly Christianized, as the celebration of the spring equinox became a celebration of the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth for many of the Western peoples, whose ancestors and their traditions did not die easily. Meanwhile, the bunny and the hare, once a symbol of reproduction and fertility, now became a symbol of virginity and was often depicted, not with Eostar or Ishtar, or Athena for that matter, but with the Virgin Mary in many Renaissance and medieval depictions. The Christian East also became a fan of Easter, incorporating it into its practices as it split more and more from the Western Church, and the city of Constantinople became the center of Orthodox Christianity, which would spread to the Slavic lands and Russia, making Easter even more celebrated, not just in the West, but in the East as well. These Eastern Christians, known as Orthodox, had their own traditions, including baskets full of goodies that were shared at Easter time, which contained ham, a common Easter staple dinner to this day, and colored eggs. Thus, several traditions came from Eastern Christians as well as from Germanic pagans and Western Christian churches. At the same time, Easter made its way to the United States and became more of a defanged and commercialized holiday thanks to German immigrants who, along with Christmas, brought many of their homeland traditions, both Christian and paganic, to the United States in the 19th century when they immigrated there in large numbers. It was the United States who, like it does best, commercialized the holiday, much like with Christmas, giving a more mundane version compared to the ancient pagan and Christian ideas surrounding death and rebirth. There were far more pleasant things to celebrate, like bunnies, chocolate eggs, and candy. Thus, the mundanity of commercialism and affluence, combined with the fun and jovial holiday, has defanged its cultural, historic, and religious traditions. Hopefully, I have been able to reassert some of them and bring some new light and information that you may not have heard before. If you enjoyed that, consider liking and subscribing. I hope everyone has a really incredible Easter and a great rest of their week, and I'll see you again on Monday for the next video that drops at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take care, and remember, love history.